first meeting for 2024 of the Lochaber Area Committee. We have apologies from Councillor John Grafton. Do we have any declarations of interest?
No.
No. Okay. So moving on to the first agenda item. Good morning and thank you for joining us, Station Commander Shay Scott.
Good morning.
An update on the performance report. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, Chair and Councillors. Many thanks for allowing me the opportunity to present Scottish Fire and Rescue Services Committee Report for Q3 of 2023. As you may have noticed, the format of the report has been changed, and this is to align with the new national format for Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, ensuring consistency in its reporting. Concerning the key performance indicators then, I'll report the following. Accidental dwelling fires, these are comparable to the previous year's Q3, with 3 incidents in Q3 and 5 year to date. This is significantly below the local and national average. Only one of these incidents required firefighting intervention and resulted in property damage. However, in this singular incident, the fire damage was contained to the room of origin, thanks to the swift and professional actions of the attending crews. There have been no fire casualties during this quarter, and this has been the case now for a significant period. The continued prevention, intervention and protection work carried out by Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and partners supports our communities and those most vulnerable and keep them safe in their own homes. Deliberate fires, 3 deliberate fires for Q3. One incident involved a property in Fort William, which was declared arson, as well as an incident in which 2 vans were set alight in the Cool area, which were also declared as arson. Both incidents are currently being investigated by Police Scotland, so as there is an active investigation ongoing, I will be unable to give any more detail at this time. Having said that, this statistic is still lower for the committee area in comparison to the wider Highland statistics and significantly lower than the national average for deliberate fires. Road traffic collisions then. There have been 3 road traffic collisions in Q3 attended by Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, which is lower than expected for the quarter. However, 2 of the incidents in Q3 involved medical response for 11 casualties and involved significant partnership working with Police Scotland and Scottish Ambulance Service to ensure the incidents were conducted safely and that all casualties received definitive medical care at the scene, and casualties that required more attention were transported to the nearest hospital. There was some learning taken from one of the incidents related to Scottish Ambulance Service protocols, which has been highlighted and will be discussed with the relevant partner agency to ensure that moving forward, all agencies attending such incidents are aware of the limitations and capabilities of each other. UFAS then, unwanted fire alarm signals, comparable to the previous year's Q3 and well below the local and national average, with engagement to repeat offenders by a legislative team when required. 8 UFAS incidents were attended by Scottish Fire and Rescue crews. No action by Scottish Fire and Rescue Service was required. Station availability. This continues to be one of our most significant challenges within the area, with reduced staff in numbers due to retirements, resignations and changes in social factors within our communities. Having said that, the Lochaber district has increased its staff by 23% in 2023 and has the highest number of female staff in the LSO area. There's also interest from other potential candidates wishing to join Scottish Fire and Rescue Service as firefighters. Fort William continues to have strong availability due to its number of staff and has potential candidates looking to join. We continue to proactively recruit but face significant challenges in recruiting and retaining personnel, with progress towards a more locally based approach supporting the candidates. There are some stations where availability has dipped slightly. However, this is due to the low level of some station establishments and the location of the station, which has a very small catchment area from which to recruit from. However, we are always looking to seek new opportunities and ways of working to further promote the value of community fire stations in the Lochaber district and at a national level. Strontian and Kinloch Leven stations did take a dip in availability in Q3. One of the main factors is that Kinloch Leven's the second fire engine was replaced with a new rapid response unit appliance to further enhance the station's operational capabilities. This incurred time away from the station to learn and qualify for new equipment and operational procedures, which will allow them to be deployed as an operational asset within the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. Strontian Fire Station took possession of a brand new fire engine to replace the older model. Again, there was a transition training program which involved some time for crews to receive instruction and training on some new items of equipment which were not available on the former fire engine. This concludes my submission for today. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions, I will seek to provide responses.
Thank you very much for that. Good to see the below average figures and decreases. Does anyone have any questions?
Hello, Shay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, yeah.
It's Councillor Thomas McLennan. It's a good report. Everything seems to be on a downward trajectory. Deliberate fires apart. Everything else seems to be moving in the right direction. I was just want to raise one item with you, Shay. In that last storm, there was a tree fell down and blocked the A82. And when that happens, it basically cuts Fort William in half, and that's a town with 12,000 people in it. And what did the fire and rescue service look like at that point? Especially to raise this as an issue that I'm asking you this, because we need to look at this when that road gets blocked, because it paralyses the town. It cuts us off from. Fire brigades couldn't get to Cool, for instance, or Corpach, or Tolandi, or anywhere where there was an incident to the north of Fort William. Ambulances, for instance, they wouldn't be able to get into Fort William to take anybody to the hospital. It was just, I was wanting to get your thoughts on this, and we need to get higher up authorities to have a look at this. But what did fire and rescue look like at that point in Fort William?
So for that particular...
Basically, how do you mitigate the town being sort of cut in half?
So we were lucky. So with Fort William Fire Station, we have quite a significant station establishment. So it allowed us to contact individuals who lived inside the affected area, for example. So although firefighters could not attend from outside from the cool area, for example, we still had sufficient firefighters within the Fort William Town Centre, which still allowed us to have a operational response to any incidents that occurred within the area that wasn't blocked on the A82. I take your point, but we do have mitigation circumstances for that, and we do plan for these sort of things. And so on that day, we had sufficient numbers to at least have one fire engine on standby, ready to respond to any incident within the town centre itself.
How would it get to Cool or Corpach? How would we deal with an incident in Cool or Corpach, anywhere on the northern side or western side of this incident? What did fire and rescue look like for them here? Were we waiting for people to come from Fort Augustus, Spearbridge, Mallow? What did it look like?
Yeah, so in that instance, if Fort William, as you were stating, is cut off, as you say, then there are other options, obviously, within the district itself and further afield. Stations such as Mallig, all the 4 stations, Ardnamurchan could have attended any instance in the cool area, and other off stations such as Fort Augustus and further afield could have made attendance on that day as well.
It's just, I think it's something that we need to have a real look at how we provide some kind of get out. We'd have to be able to get vehicular traffic, emergency traffic. You think about, I know it's a hot topic, but the site of a new hospital in the Flower, that would have left Fort William unable to get to hospital at that point in time. So it's something that the authorities need to have a serious look at. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Think, Mike, were you wanting to expand on that?
Thank you, Chair. Very much appreciated, and thank you, Councillor, for the input there. She's quite correct. The resilience model we have as partner agencies now has moved dynamically from that local model to a national model. This allows us to draw upon resources across the whole of Scotland. I think that the comments you make, and I would stay away from any of our partner agencies, regarding getting to hospital, etc. I work very closely through our resilience partnerships and Highlands and Islands as to how we manage these situations, and we stand up emergency liaison groups, so we determine what we can do and care for people there. So all the agencies will tend to come together at a very short notice. We will sit down, we will look at what opportunities and challenges we have. We will call on our partners in Oban, Argyll and Bute, further afield if we need to, and then we manage those situations. We're under no illusion that this is probably a format for the future due to the changing weather pattern and climates we have. But please be reassured that as organisations, we absolutely are on top of that when we meet together to discuss what could be a significant challenge for us. The tree blockages we've had recently have caused quite a bit, but Highland Council, and I have to give them praise here, have done a remarkable job of clearing up at very short notice, working through the hours of the evening, etc., trying to support everybody, and we've been very fortunate that nobody's been severely injured or worst case in these situations. But please be reassured that there are groups that will come together extremely quickly, local ELGs for the Lochaber, Ardmachan area, or further afield for Highlands and Highlands.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Angus?
Mike, I wrote to you about 4 or 5 months ago about Spear Bridge clients and the equipment being well past its sell-by date. And I can't recall exactly, but I think you did say that there was a review of it going on. And I'm wondering if I can have an update on that. We're replacing equipment across the older appliances.
So, as that's not in Shay's particular sphere of responsibility at this time, I will happily come in there, Councillor, and thank you very much for that. At the time, I responded and indicated that we were looking at different types of models to suit different environments. And I am pleased to say that what we call our community response unit stations have all been allocated funding for a new vehicle, which will come with new, fully kitted, new equipment, providing some to degree off-road capability as well. And those are now they're either being tendered for, or the tender has been issued, and we should see them later on this year. That's a project that's ongoing, and I'm pleased to say that that is something that will happen sooner rather than later.
Thanks for that, Mike. Any other questions from anyone? I don't think we've got any online. No. So I think, well, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And yes, hopefully the worst of the winter weather might be over soon. Anyway, thank you very much for your time and the report.
Okay, Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you. So item 4 is an update on the Corran Ferry, and we've just Area Roads Manager Richard Porteous is just about to join us in the room. That's not going to go any further, is it? Okay. So good morning, Richard. Thank you very much for joining us this morning and for preparing the report. Was a lot of information in that, so I think I'll hand over to you, and you might be giving us a bit of a summary of what was in the report.
Thanks very much, Chair, members. Yes, so the Corran Ferry report basically was written to provide a debrief and a bit of information in that regard about the situation that we've experienced over the last year with Corran Ferry, which has been a very difficult year and a stressful time for all concerned. A highly unusual year, the Corran Ferry generally having a good track record in terms of breakdowns, relatively problematic since its launch in 2001. But of course this was a different story this year, which came about and resulted in a loss of service when we had the main vessel, the MV Corran, which I was just referring to, actually broken down at the same time as a breakdown with the relief vessel. So a highly unusual situation. So the report really explains how that came about and what we did to remedy it. the contingency measures that were put in place locally to attempt to compensate by providing passenger services. And the report also indicates the cost involved in doing that. The ferry team are extremely grateful to the community and being the general public and the local business community during that time for their understanding and cooperation at times. Equally grateful to service suppliers, CalMac, who helped out with parts at one point, and the MCA, who obviously we had to work with closely to get our passenger certificate back. And of course maintenance contractors and partner agencies, and they were key on the journey along the way in terms of communications and public messages, and we were grateful to them for that. The Highland Council Corran Ferry service is a bespoke service because of the particular conditions at the Corran Narrows. So because of the strong tide race, the ferry sits alongside the slipway, and has a ramp on the quarter, on the corner. So that's quite different from the other services in the West Coast, which are ro-ro. So we have a dedicated 2 vessels, and as I say, it's highly unusual that both are out of action at the same time, because quite lucky in that respect that we do have an on-site contingency vessel normally. Of course, we were in a position where we didn't have a contingency for the contingency other than the passenger services. So since this first happened for a week only, then thank goodness, back in 2017, every effort has gone into a plan to replace the older second vessel, the Maida Glencoe. So that began with a strategic business case, socio-economic studies, outline business case, 1.6 million approved and spent on designs. So we're now shovel ready to invest in the service. And one of that elements is new infrastructure to allow us to move to a ro-ro infrastructure, so that we then do have a contingency for the contingency, so that if hopefully it never happens again, but if both vessels were out of action at once, then there would be an option to bring in another ro-ro vessel from another fleet, because we wouldn't be looking for a bespoke vessel, we'd be looking for a ro-ro vessel this time. So that is the plan, and we're very grateful. The Council and the Scottish Government announced just a couple of weeks ago there that we have found 20 million towards that new infrastructure.
I thought that was Westminster Government.
Sorry, did I say?
Scottish Government.
Did I? Sorry, Westminster Government in the recent budget announcement. Yes, thanks. So we have a plan for the infrastructure, and the next phase to add on to that is to invest in a new vessel, and that's something the Council are actively working on at the moment. So I hope that gives a bit of a summary, Chair, and the report. There's a few pages in the report and quite a bit of detail, so don't really want to try and repeat all that, but obviously happy to try and answer any questions that might come out of it for the committee.
Thank you very much, Richard, and yes, I appreciate it was a very challenging year, and that this has been a long-term that we're in the a long-term program, and that there is the plans are in place. Do we have any questions for Richard? So I think Angus first.
Richard, I don't know if you're close enough to it. Are we any closer to getting funding? And I know we're actively engaged with the Scottish Government. Is there something that we can look forward to for the balance of the funding?
I am quite close to it, but I'm not at the cutting edge in terms of the high-level discussions and that are going on at that level. Obviously, as a council and as a team, we're leaving no stone unturned in thinking about how it might be funded. So that hasn't reached any conclusion yet. It's obviously we're extremely happy to have received the 20 million as a start, and so there's great efforts now going into trying to build on that, particularly focusing on vessel replacement. So yeah, I can't really, I don't have an answer. I'm an eternal optimist, and there's a lot of us around, and it needs to be, because it is a significant chunk of money, but it doesn't grow on trees. We have to find a way of either attracting a grant or diverting some existing grant or funding it through borrowing, etc. So all that work is being done at the moment.
And the Maid of Glen call have we got a timeline for that, when that's going to be?
Well, yeah, ASAP, because I mentioned our contingency vessel a lot, but she's not operating at the moment. Still, we invested several £100,000 in a new steering system a year and a half ago, and we've had a couple of glitches with it, and it's a lot of it is to do with fitting a modern system to such an old vessel due to obsolescence of parts and interfaces. So it has thrown up a couple of issues still, and we're trying to resolve that. Mechanically, everything's repaired. The work that we're doing now is on the controls side, and we feel we're almost there. And I have another meeting tomorrow with the supplier. So we're communicating with them on a daily basis and working hard to achieve that. And she has her own annual refit due in March, and we don't want to have to tow her to that. We want her to be able to go on her own steam. So that is a deadline in itself, but we want her back in action before that. And so every effort is going in on a daily basis to achieving that.
How long is that refit?
It should be 4 to 6 weeks. She does look like we have to replace some steel work on her, so it's more likely to be 6 weeks. If that's more extensive than we yet know, then it could stretch to 8 weeks.
Thank you. Thanks, Angus. Thanks, Richard. Sarah?
Thank you, Richard, for the report and the summary. A couple of points. Back to the Maid of Glencore. You mentioned in the report a replacement of the Maid of Glencore. Are we talking about a replacement using the current slipways or using the new slipways? The new infrastructures. So in other words, are we talking about quarterdeck? Or are we talking about a different type of vessel?
And moving forward, it would definitely be a ro-ro vessel,
Okay.
using the new slipways. But as I say, designs for vessels and slipways are complete, or virtually. There's a few I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed, but so it's shovel ready. So the only thing construction of these depends on is the funding. And we have the funding for the infrastructure, and we have to spend it by a certain deadline, which I think is 26 or 27. So as soon as the designs are finalised, we'll be pushing on to get the tenders out and that underway.
Would that new ferry be the main vessel, and then MV Corran would act as some kind of backup? Or would it still be a backup for MV Corran? What's the plan?
It would be the newest vessel, and it would be a capacity of 30 cars. So it would become the main vessel in time, or as soon as it comes into service, it would become the main vessel. So immediately we've got increased capacity on the route then, because we would have the Corran, which is 28 cars, and the new vessel, which is 30, as opposed to Corran, which is 28. And the Maid, which is 14. So we would no longer see the capacity issues that we have when the Maid is covering, which even at the quietest time of year can be an issue because she's so small. So that would be a huge step forward for us.
So at the moment we're still operating with Mate and MV Corran. If there was a breakdown again, I mean, what 2023 was very special, but it's not just a breakdown, it's how long it took actually to get it repaired, because somebody once described the vessels we're operating as vintage vehicles because technology has moved on and getting parts is getting more and more difficult. Would we be again in that kind of situation because of the age of the vessels, or was 2023 bad luck, considering that MV Corran is not the older vessel and it's still in good shape?
Yeah, I mean, most people would consider, she's 23, so most people would consider that she has another 20 years service in her. She's been extremely well maintained, and yes, it was extremely bad luck this year, particularly with the type of unit that failed. These Boyd units are the Rolls-Royce of propulsion units, and they're generally lifetime units for the vessel without that sort of failure. So it was extremely bad luck.
And is there anything we can do to ensure that if there is a breakdown, it's not going to take that long again? Or is it just?
Well, yes, we've got a fantastic relationship with Boyd, and there's regimes that we have in place, such as regular oil sampling in a hydraulic unit like that. It allows you to monitor without having to open up the unit so regularly, and you build up a data set for the performance of the unit. So that's the sort of technical thing that we do, and we have an agreement in terms of annual servicing with them as well. So, and they're the manufacturer, and there's a vast number of these units in the maritime world, and they're extremely reliable. Generally, yeah.
So hopefully the mate will be back soon. You can't put a date yet, though.
No, can't put a date on it yet. I was hoping to come to committee having her back in service, so we're hoping it's that soon. It's something we're watching on a daily basis at the moment.
And my question is, hopefully the 2 breakdowns we've had, in 2023 will never happen again. But if it does, how quickly how long will it take to activate the mitigation plans to get the passenger aboard, the service? How long will it take us? Last year it took about 2 weeks, I think, to get started. How long will it take this time?
I think actually it took about 2 days to get started with the passenger service across the Narrows, but we did beef it up in the second week. I think we started with 1 vessel, and then we moved to 2, and then in that within about 7 days we had a passenger service up the loch as well, and about that time we also introduced the extra crossings at the Camas-na-Gaul crossing, and it did take a while to get a bus organised.
I did notice the second time it broke down, it was much quicker.
Yeah.
Will it be the same in future? Will it be?
I would like to say yes. It'll be we know exactly what to do. We've got a blueprint for it. It'll be an immediate reaction. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. Have you got?
That's a report, Richard. I wasn't going to raise it, but since you piqued my interest with when you were saying about the service and the kind of at 5.3, it says such a failure of a lifetime part is highly unusual, and the service and contractor engineers conducted an investigation and produced a report which explained the failure was due to an unusual failure in the metalwork of a key component, which subsequently caused damage to other parts when the unit was restarted after the refit. I guess I had my time as an engineer, and so there was no warning this failure was coming. Obviously the oil results were coming back good, and I would imagine if it's a lifetime part, it'll probably be a relatively simplistic piece of engineering, and we've got no warning that it's happening, but it gets uncovered when it's at the shipyard. Is that what happened? We had no clue that there was anything wrong, but it gets uncovered in the shipyard.
Correct. Yeah.
Now the webcam, if we're going to get that up, is it up yet? What's the latest on that?
Yeah, we're almost there. I've personally been working with our IT team and a supplier. Again, it's something that we feel like we're getting there on a daily basis, but it keeps regrettably dragging on. So it's something that I'm pushing very hard. Everyone involved is aware that there's a lot of pressure to deliver ASAP. So again, I hope that's going to come to conclusion very shortly.
Because it would help, and certainly when it gets to the height of the season, that will be a handy feature to have, to be able to look and see how busy is the ferry as you want to either cross from the side or leave the peninsula. At 8.3, I think this is something that we really do need to flag up to people. We are hamstrung, our hands are tied by climate change. Funding streams are pretty remote if we don't go down the electrical route. I don't agree with it. I think a diesel one would be the answer, but at 8.3 spells out just how our hands are basically tied.
Yeah.
And at 8.4, the designs are nearly complete for a new vehicle, a new vessel, sorry. When do you think we will have that complete, and when will we be able to start getting prices and things like that?
This year. I think it's either quarter 1 or quarter 3. But as I say, it's really just putting the finishing touches. The general arrangement drawings are done for the vessels. The powering requirements are assessed and matched to the route profile. Hull design is all complete, etc. And the outfitting, again, it's virtually all complete. So it's and we're part of the small vessel replacement program. So everything is standardised with all vessels on that program, so that we do get intercompatibility in the future, not just in deploying vessels, but in servicing and repairs and maintenance support as well, which again is a good contingency for the future, because it gives that reassurance in terms of reliability.
The only other 2 points I wanted to make was, like my colleagues have said, that you need to get the meter cool back and on standby ASAP. And just like design life, you said there the NV Corran should have another 20 years, but just to confirm, like my understanding is a ferry like that, it has a design life at outset of 25 years. That's what they designed them to last. Once you go beyond that, your bills for maintenance levels goes up. But am I right in saying that these vessels had an original design life of 25 years?
Yeah, that is very true. Nowadays, they might stretch that to 30 years. If you're borrowing, for example, you probably borrow over a 30-year lifespan for capital investment, whereas infrastructure is over 60 years. So for a vessel, you could probably nowadays you would stretch that to 30 years. But as we know, as soon as the Corran will approach 20 years, we knew we had to begin planning for her replacement, and that's what we've done ever since. As we know, it takes a while to do that. You can't just buy one off the shelf, and obviously all the other factors coming into play, such as the net zero targets and the various documents at Scottish Government and UK Government level, mapping out the pathway to net zero, which they began writing these in 2019. So it's very clear, the writing on the wall since then, that for short sea crossings, electric is the requirement.
I think the Racing one has been running on diesel for the last 5 months.
The Racing one, yeah, is a hybrid one. Yeah, so we're talking fully electric. So the hybrids were part of the pathway in the development of electric vessels and vehicles. and so the move in industry now is to fully electric. So they have a diesel generator on board, but that doesn't power the drivetrain. It charges the battery, which powers the motor, which powers the propulsion unit. So that is the technology. Obviously, for longer sea crossings, they're looking at other technology, other alternative fuels, and obviously in road haulage, they're looking at hydrogen and all sorts of things, because that is the momentum and the requirement to meet net zero.
Sarah?
Can we just go back to the electric technology? This diesel generator. My understanding is that the diesel generator is only there as a backup in the case of, say, power cuts, for example. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So it will. Obviously, that means there'll be a requirement for a certain amount of diesel to be stored on board in a tank, but it's hugely smaller than the existing diesel tanks, which obviously power the vessel all day. But yeah, so if there was a power failure of any kind, then and the batteries needed additional charging, then the diesel generator would run and top up the batteries. And that's how it works. Yeah. It's this obviously part of the development of the new infrastructure is in making sure that we have a adequate supply at our tower to charge up the vessels. So that's part of the work in the planning stage at the moment.
And what do you say to communities that express concerns about new technologies? There's been mentions of electric ferries perhaps not being able to cope with circumstances, the geographical circumstances in the harbour.
Yeah.
Where are we? And bearing in mind that by the time we get those electric ferries, that's what we get in the end, technology will have advanced by then.
Yes.
So what do you say to communities expressing concerns about those new technologies?
Yeah, no, I totally understand. These are the thoughts that we all have, I think, as we embrace new technology and change in how vessels and vehicles are powered. So yeah, it's natural to have questions and concerns. So I totally understand that. These technologies have been developed quite extensively all over the world. The leaders tend to be in Scandinavia, but also North America. But the private sector is also adopting battery power for super yachts and that type of thing. Container ships are using battery technology for their hotel load, as they call it, and for overnight power requirements when they're in, and all power requirements when they're in dock. So the industry is moving at a pace and has been for the last couple of decades, really, to get us to the point we're at now. And for example, the battery manufacturers that supply the batteries that these type of ferries use, they're now on Mark V in terms of the battery systems. So they've been developing intensively over the last 10 years. So the batteries that they use now are much more highly advanced than the batteries 10 years ago, and they're now on their 5th iteration of those batteries. So technology is becoming advanced and reliable, and it is being used currently all over the world. And particularly, if anybody wants to have a look, they're easy to find on the internet. If you're looking at Scandinavian ferries in Norway in particular, and they have dozens of electric ferries operating all over Norway.
Okay, thanks, Richard. And Andrew's got a question online. Oh, I think. Have you still got your hand up, Andrew, or not?
I did have it up, Kate. It was just a curiosity, actually. Former life, I used to work in the marine industry, and I was just curious as to who was doing your design and proposed build.
Hi, Andrew. Yes, it's Chair. It's a German company called Navalue.
All right.
And the humour is not lost on anyone from Scotland in that name, Navalue, if you pronounce it as it's written. But it's naval. It's a combination of naval and value, which was quite clever, really, when the Germans devised the name. But of course, they probably didn't expect to be working in Scotland at that time.
Yeah.
But, Navalue is how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
And they're a very experienced firm and very dedicated to providing, you know, a highly professional naval architecture service, and they're very committed to ferry services and net value technology.
That's good. Your comment there reminded me of a company I used to work for before that, which was in the electrical industry, and the German for soldering is Löten, and the company name in Germany was Lotec. Didn't work in this country.
Yeah, same idea. Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks, Andrew and Richard. So I've got a couple of questions, Richard. Moving back on land, fantastic that the funding is there to improve the shoreside infrastructure. So my question is, and that how necessary it is, because we need to be moving to ro-ro ferries for flexibility, etc. If we didn't put in new shoreside infrastructure now, I'm assuming that the current slipways are getting close to the end of their life anyway. So it is this an essential part of the programme? What is the lifespan left in our current slipways?
That's a very good point. They are elderly now, and they require regular maintenance. They're very low technology, so it's possible to keep them going indefinitely, really. But that comes with a cost. Yeah, so the older they are, the greater the cost. Obviously, with a slipway, you get erosion, you know, all over it from wave action and undermining through wash and just the wear and tear of traffic and the salt water on the concrete, etc. So, yeah, that's right. So. In building new slipways, we're saving on maintenance on the old ones, and there will come a point where they're obsolete when we move to entirely ro-ro. So as we transition, there'll be a point probably where we still have we may have 3 vessels for a very short while until we're able to finally release the Maid of Glencool. So she'll be able to continue to operate on that slipway.
Okay. Thank you.
For a short while.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. And also, just in Appendix 1, where you've listed the costings, so you've got the cost of the temporary services for the passing places, and so does that cost include that there was a lot more work done at the end of last year, wasn't there? So just is that included in that, or were there further costs that you haven't managed to include in that report?
Yeah, so that 200,000 in the report there was for the initial works to get an immediate effect and improvement on the road. So we put in the temporary passing places, we put in the passing places with a temporary surface, but then we subsequently resurfaced that, and that was an additional cost, which cost about over £400,000. But that money wasn't included here because that came from the area roads capital budget. But it was definitely a cost associated with that road and the improvements. But it wasn't seen to be included in the contingencies as such. So it was subsequent works that we did to improve the road network. But of course, it's great to get it done, and it was good to get it completed before Christmas. We couldn't actually do the work until the ferry was back, so the surfacing was done in November, December.
Okay, thanks. Was that so that work's completed? Are there any other further works planned on that road?
Well, it might. I wasn't sure if this was going to come up in this report or the roads report, but there are no immediate plans because, as I say, we spent over 400,000 last year from the area budget. Before that, the year before, we spent several hundred thousand on surface dressing on that road, and the year before that, we spent several hundred thousand on road surface improvements that were urgent. The 400,000 that we've just spent included some surfacing of sections in between the passing places, which was urgent as well, and that was. So we were happy to manage to accomplish both tasks this year with that 400,000. So what it means is, from a surfacing point of view, there's less urgent priority now on that road. We've spent over £1 million in the last 3 years on it, so the benefit is there to see, and we're all so grateful for that when the ferry was off. But of course, it means there's no immediate priority plan for next year for that road, and there have been obviously. Some people are minded that there maybe should be some more passing places on the other end of the road. We focused on this end in the contingency arrangements when the ferry was off, because that was perceived to be the most urgent need. And now that that's accomplished, it's made a big difference, along with the speed limit changes that were implemented as well. So it's something that I think everybody is keen and happy to keep under review, but it's not determined currently as the most urgent priority for the area budget. So unless there was additional money forthcoming from somewhere else, or we're putting some into an urgent situation, then that's probably likely to be the case that another road might have to take priority this year.
Thanks, Richard. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Richard, for the report and all the work that's been going on with the ferry. And we note the recommendations in the report. Is everyone happy with the recommendations? Just to note the information provided, Sarah.
And I'm sure that councils will join me, but can you pass our thanks to the crew?
Yes.
Who have worked in extremely difficult circumstances that asked for us.
I will do.
Thanks, Sarah. Yep. And then, so we're on to item 5, which is the Lochaber Area Roads Programme, and back to you, Richard. Thank you again.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Thanks very much, Chair, members. So this is the annual report discussing the capital allocation for roads for the Lochaber area. So it is the capital programme. It's quite distinct from the revenue budget, which funds our labour and plant and materials resource for cyclical road maintenance and winter maintenance. So this is separate from that. This is capital money for programmed work, and that's predominantly surfacing and surface dressing. So we've lately, in recent years, we've got into a system where we're tending to do a significant amount of surface dressing one year and then focus on surfacing the next year and surface dress the year after that. So we did surface dressing this year, so next year we're planning to focus on surfacing only. In terms of what we can achieve, we've set out a list of priorities on Appendix 2. And as usual, we've drawn a line somewhere where we think the money will stretch to. So in recent years, we've had an uplift to the basic allocation of capital, which everyone has been extremely grateful for. So we don't know yet. It's January. The Finance Committee hasn't agreed the budget yet. So we have drawn a line in the position we would think we would get to with the basic allocation, which the figure that's used for Highland wide is 7.2 million Highland wide. So in the last 3 years at least, we've had more than double that, sometimes 3 times that allocation. And so if we get the basic allocation, it won't go anywhere near as far as that. And of course, the list of works in Appendix 2 shows you know, how extensive the opportunity is for road repairs, identified through officers' inspections and scheme builder auto inspections that we do through the Scottish Road Testing Survey. So all these combined result in the list that is in Appendix 2. And what we've found over the years, obviously, is where there's a huge amount of works identified on one road, we can't afford to do all of it, so we'll focus on the worst section on that road to allow us to spread the money across the area where appropriate, so that we can achieve as many priorities as we can with the money that we have available. So yeah, so the report in Appendix 2 states that a basic allocation will be over 500,000 for Lochaber. So we're hoping to get more, but we're intending that we would spend that primarily on a surfacing scheme on the B8007, on a programme that's with a surfacing contractor. That we then have an in-house programme and try and cover as many priority sections, small patch sections, delivering that in-house, spending another 200,000. And then there's some smaller amounts for structural integrity works, as we call it, which basically means attending to issues in the road that are affecting the surface. So water on the road is not good for the road. Ingress creates potholes, and in the winter freeze thaw action causes cracking and further potholes, etc. Obviously, also you can have issues with ponding and flooding, which then has a knock-on effect on the road infrastructure. So by allocating some money to these improvements, it preserves the life of the road, and in some cases we have to do these works before we then do the surfacing. So that's the reason for those lines there.
Is that you're talking about the additional works section at the bottom of the table, or?
That's right. So that's rows,
okay.
the bottom 3 rows really. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's relatively small beer, but it's making sure we're covered. Sorry.
About half the budget's on the B007, so it's quite a lot of your entire budget. I'm sure it's necessary, otherwise we wouldn't put it in there. But it is surprising.
Yeah, I mean that is a small amount of money. If you think that we spent 400,000 on the surfacing works on the A861, just surfacing the passing place improvements and the short sections in between some of them. So you know, an overall budget of 500,000 doesn't go very far.
And that, presumably that road will be closed entirely because it's single track, isn't it?
Well, yes, traffic management will be a really important consideration on many of our roads. So we try to avoid road closures, and if we do, we try to work very hard to inconvenience the local community as little as possible by managing amnesties and or doing works overnight, etc.
So that won't happen in the middle of the summer.
Well, I see what you're asking, and yes, that's the sort of situation we want to try and avoid. The best weather in Lochaber, dare I say it, is usually in May, so we try to get. It condenses the the planning, the decision-making process, and the works into quite a small window then, because the budget's not agreed until February, and then very soon you're into April, May. So, but that's the best time to do it. So we do try to press on with the programme once we have the go-ahead as soon as possible. Yeah.
I'm right in thinking that's the way to go home. Yeah, the school kids have to go to schools, Shonty, and the impact could be huge. And it's just something to have involved with the community council at a very early stage, may I suggest.
Thanks. Will do. Yeah. Will do.
Sarah?
Okay. Thank you. Back to B8007, that's the road to Kirkland, basically. There's a lot of damage has been done with the rain. We had the landslide back in September, October, maybe autumn. Will this work actually be enough to limit the risk of more, not landslides, but structural damage to the roads, which will be caused by more rain, which we can expect in the future?
Yeah, it's just very difficult to give that sort of commitment. Obviously, the drainage associated with the road is key to that. So we're talking ditches and culverts and bridges in some cases. Yeah, so that's part of our cyclical maintenance program, and also it can be reactionary, because even with the best cyclical maintenance program, you can get a 1 in 50 year event where you get a deluge of water, and the infrastructure struggles to cope with it. And so you might have a well-maintained culvert, but and it might be a metre in diameter, but if the burn swells to sort of 3-4 metres wide and it's bringing rocks down the hill which block the entrance, suddenly you've got water pouring over the road and undermining the structure of the road. So it's unfortunately these events do happen. When you're planning for flooding, that's the sort of terminology that they use. Obviously, events, be they annual events, 1 in 10 years, 1 in 50 years, 1 in 200, etc. So yeah.
I suggest that having a public meeting there, and then it could give timescales for each section. And I really do think there's only one road in and out. It's enormously worrying for them. They had Corran last year. Yeah. It is. I think it's something to be handled with kid gloves. And
the other thing about that road is that it's the only one with an MFO. And very often Calmac uses that road as an argument to, when they have to redeploy ferries, to say, oh, well, you have a road to get to Kirkland. Well, last year when they redeployed the ferry, there wasn't a road because the road was shut. Yeah. So also some communication with Calmac about that. It would be very unfortunate that if they redeploy the ferry at the same time as we have the road closure, because lots of people also travel to do their shopping, yeah, and to access services. Mm. So, as Angus was saying, in communication with the community councils about the time scale and what is going to happen.
Yeah, thanks, members. Chair, I can give that commitment that we will take that on board and be very upfront with our communication and on the front foot with our communication with the Community Council and yourselves. So we'll commit to that one.
Yeah, great, thank you, Richard. In terms of the roads that we've got here, and the second on the list, Egg, just wondering how presumably this work is based on road condition. Is it also in terms of volume of use on a road? How are these? How's the decision reached? Just think, in terms of, obviously, I presume the road on Egg needs work on it, but is the volume of use on a road considered as well? I think it might be. Yeah. What is planned for the road on Egg, for example?
Sorry.
What is planned for the road on Egg?
Yeah.
For example.
No, thanks for this. It's a very good question, and obviously it sticks out a bit like a sore thumb on that list because it's a U-class road, but a bit like the B8007, it's the only road they've got, and the condition has deteriorated as a result of inspections that you mentioned quite dramatically in recent years. We were lucky enough to attract some Scottish Timber Transport Scheme funding to pay for some works to it 3 years ago, but that was only a very small proportion, and it has deteriorated even further since then, and it's been drawn to our attention a fair bit at quite a high level as well. There's been some political interest in it from the member of the Scottish Parliament. But yeah, as you say, it comes down to priorities and inspections. But it's the only road they've got. It's in drastic need of repair. But the other reason is we've also managed to attract some more funding towards that, which would help reduce the effect on the area capital programme. So it is a priority for the reasons I've mentioned, but we hope to mitigate the cost to the capital programme because we've been given some money from the Small Isles Improvement Fund towards that. So, but that's a relatively small amount of money, and the economies of scale and the cost in the logistics of getting surfacing equipment over there means that it would make sense to contribute more from the area budget so that we can do a relatively one hit and resolve the problem so we don't have to return for several years after that. Apart from that, maintenance is primarily only done by a local operator on the island, so it's small scale repairs that are ever able to be achieved, so it tends to be sort of boom or bust where it reaches a point where we do need to go in and spend some money there. And that's the point we've reached, and that's why we put it above the line, so that we would, whatever the budget was, and because we've got this extra money, hopefully we can find enough from the area budget to top that up to allow that scheme to go ahead. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. Hang on, I think Andrew, you've got your hand up, I think.
Yes, I have. Thanks. Richard, Neudart keep making noises about their roads being very, very poor. I accept the comment about transport of equipment, obviously. Can you give any news on that one, please?
Yes. At the moment, we it's on our radar, and as I mentioned, the bulk of the works listed in Appendix 2 are on the main road network and the arterial routes, whatever category they're in. And yeah, like Egg, Neudart has a case as well, but Egg stands out this year, and then we'll then be able to focus on the others. Additional works, the section at the bottom of Appendix 2, so that there's scope in there for us to address issues throughout the network. So any, and that includes Neudart. So any of the most urgent issues there, we would hope we'd be able to take care of, so that the communities are not unduly affected, And obviously, if the budget is greater, then that gives us more scope to do that. There's no way we can address all the issues on the main road network that are highlighted there, and we'll have to target the money and try and deal with as many problems as we can. And so we would include Noida when we look at that.
Thank you. Doesn't sound too hopeful.
Well, I suppose we've not picked it out as an urgent priority on this list, but what I'm saying is throughout the year, obviously this is a bit of a snapshot as well. We're still into January, and anything can happen between now and April in terms of the weather effect on the network.
True.
So quite often we have to reprioritise, and so if there are urgent priorities anywhere, then we'll of course continue that conversation and address them as best we can.
I'm suggesting it's pretty urgent for the people it affects on Noida anyway. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Chair.
Thanks, Andrew, Richard, Sarah, for your.
Thank you, and I can come back to another road, this time closer to home, which is the road to the high road to Kinocklin to Glencoe. So surfacing, does that mean the road will be closed? Will that affect the buses? Because last year when there was a closure, one of the big problems we had was that the bus service was disrupted, and we ended up actually with buses not arriving at a reliable time because they had to go around by the low road. And how long is it going to take? Is it going to be traffic lights? Just what are we talking about?
Excuse me, I couldn't give you the exact timings at the moment, but sorry. I'll take your comments on board though, and just give the same commitment that I did with the B9007, that we'll do everything we possibly can to mitigate the effect for the community. Obviously, the long-term benefit is the improved road service, and sometimes it does come with a bit of pain, but we totally understand that we have to minimise that, and we'll do everything that we can to do that. Thanks.
Thomas?
I was just going to ask a really quick question. When works are carried on an adopted road by another contractor or builder, if they're doing work nearby, and they say they do something like a road crossing, who inspects that work afterwards? So like the road's an adoptable standard road. Is there a signing off process to anything? And the reason I'm asking, I get asked questions about a particular repair that's been done, and to my untrained eye, it doesn't look like it's up to standard. But if you put a groove across an adopted road and then you fill it back in with tar, I would imagine it has to be sealed on both sides. Would I be right in assuming that? Because this just has tar put in and it's left and it's actually dropping down a wee bit. Do we check these works?
Yeah. Yes, sorry.
Am I right in saying it should be sealed?
Correct, yes, ideally it should be sealed. So our roads inspector inspects these works. That is part of his job, or her job, but his in this case. And yeah, that's an essential part of it, is monitoring the reinstatements by utility companies.
I just get the impression that in terms of the longevity, what was a good road in years to come, it will fail because water increase is definitely going to occur. But I'll send you an email about it.
Thanks very much. Yeah. Yeah, so we can obviously take recourse with them if that's necessary.
So, I guess a final question. So, if we do end up with a 7.2 million budget for the area, I'm assuming all those 20 roads listed in this works programme, it is anticipated that all that work will be undertaken this year. Is that correct?
I'll have to just interject there and apologise for not making that clear, because that 7.2 million is the Highland wide total allocation.
Sorry,
no, that's my fault because it's such an important point, and I haven't perhaps made that clear. But yeah, so our allocation is just the 5 anticipated allocation, unless there's additional, is just the 566,000.
Yeah.
Which
Okay.
so it doesn't really go very far.
So we've got like at the bottom, we've got 585, and then we've got another the additional works. So how does that fit into that total budget?
Okay, so the format that we've sort of tended to use is below row 2 in the main works programme. There's a line which extends out to the 216, which is a total for the first two. So that's saying if we get that 566,000 at the bottom there, that's as much as we'll be able to do from the main programme, because we've set aside 350,000 off the 566 for these additional works, which amount to 350,000. So that's 220,000 for smaller surfacing schemes, 60,000 for structural integrity works around drainage and storm damage issues, and 50,000 structural integrity improvements around the drainage and flood prevention system at Lochaber Leisure Centre, near Lochaber Leisure Centre. So those bottom 4 add up to 350,000. The top 2 add up to 216,000, and then the combination is 566,000, which is the estimate of what we think we'll get if we get the Highland-wide default of 7.2 million.
Okay, right here. Yeah. So all the others are on the wish list.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, because I had got my commas and full stops mixed up in that other total. Is my side.
That's right. What I was mentioning before as well is that the ones on the wish list, some of them are extremely big numbers. And it comes to, as you say, a total of near 6 million.
Yeah.
So there's the best that we've had, I think, in recent years has been about 1.5 million. So even if we get 1.5 million, we'll still have to target sections of these roads. So it's trying to spread the money as far as we can get it.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Richard. Do we have any other questions? No. Okay. Excellent. So we're just are we happy to approve the agreed works area roads capital programme that we have in front of us? Agreed. Thank you. So thank you very much for coming over and joining the meeting, Richard. Much appreciated, and safe travels.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. So moving on to item 6, we have got the draft Fort William Town Centre Master Plan and Delivery Framework, and we have got online.
Yeah, Anthony Hubbard.
Anthony Hubbard from 360 Architecture. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. And I think you're just...
I'll do an intro to it.
Okay, so we've got Dot is going to do an introduction for us, because I believe Alan Webster's been unable to attend due to illness. So I'll pass over to you first, Dot.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, members. We do have apologies from Alan Webster today, unfortunately. So I'm just going to give a very brief intro to this. Anthony Hubbard from 360 is with us, as is Alison Martin, who is the Fort William 2040 project manager as well. So the report that you have before you today provides an overview of the process which has been gone through to develop the draft Fort William Town Centre Master Plan and the delivery framework. Partly as a result of COVID, there was clear changes in working, shopping and travel behaviour, and it became very clear that this indicated a need for a planned intervention to ensure that Fort William would remain a vibrant town centre environment. The Fort William 2040 programme itself is at a critical stage in terms of implementing the agreed vision, and there's now a need to position the town centre at the core of the Fort William 2040 programme. So really the draft plan that you've seen in your papers today seeks to build on the Town Centre Action Plan, which you'll remember was produced in 2015, and also to provide the Fort William 2040 Board with a framework for progress. In July last year, and working with the Highlands and Islands Enterprise and Lochaber Chamber of Commerce, 360 Architecture were appointed, and that was to develop a refreshed plan for the town centre, and there's 6 key themes in that. Balanced uses, legible, how we move around the town, about town as an area for living, residential, and also for working, but also making sure it remains as a vibrant town centre as well. Section 6 of the report, and also detailed further in Appendices 2 and 3, sets out the comprehensive stakeholder engagement that's gone through to date. However, as a result of a lot of the stakeholder engagement, and as a result of the sort of very high-level plans, very what's the word I'm looking for? Very visionary plans for the town centre. It's clear that we do need a further period of engagement as well, and largely this is part of the recommendation before you today. So if I can hand over to Anthony just now, and he'll produce some of the highlights of the plan.
Sure. Hi, good morning, folks. Thanks for giving me the time to chat you through this. It's a big document. I've got 10 minutes. I will rattle through as much of it as I can and try and keep it as concise as I possibly can and get into the key things. And apologies to anyone who has heard me drone on about this in previous meetings. I'll just, as I say, I'll just crack on. So I will share the full document, but we'll speed through to the bits that I think are most relevant. So I'll just share screen. Hopefully this works. Hey, can everyone see the cover?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Right, okay. So as Dot was explaining, this is a master plan and delivery framework for the town centre of Fort William. And it's an outturn of the wider Fort William 2040 vision, as you're all aware. What we've sought to do here is create a connected, inclusive and resilient town centre, a future Fort William that's transformed into a vibrant, mixed-use and better connected town centre that meets the needs of the whole community, both within the town and the wider Lochaber area. And it's about creating a town centre that's connected to its community, to the water, importantly, to the Highlands, and also to visitors, because you have such a large tourism industry there. And so as Dot was explaining, there are 6 individual sections to this in terms of our methodology. I won't go through all of the sort of background context and research that we've done into the town. Needless to say, it's all there within the main report. There are challenges in terms of retail habits, the poor arrival experience, the lack of connection to the loch and the fort, and the perceived lack of residential accommodation within the town centre. There have been a great number of positive moves already made, and the town really does punch above its weight when compared to other towns of commensurate size throughout Scotland and wider, we've found. So I'll speed through these. So in terms of stakeholder engagement, we did have a stakeholder workshop. We have had one-to-one stakeholder engagement with a number of parties and individuals, and we had the public exhibition in the Nevis Centre on the 15th of November. And the intention is, as Dot was saying, to do a further series of engagement events going forward for the next 12 weeks or so, which I think forms part of the report. In terms of our methodology, it's such a multi-headed beast, a town centre. It involves everything. So we've tried to distill that into 6 key sections: balanced, legible, living, working, vibrant and responsible. And I'll just take you through each of these, the big moves in each one in turn. So I'll just put the timer on just so I don't go over. Okay, so the first thing would be looking at balanced town, where we look at really sort of like retail and rebalancing around retail, and just about what we focus on and what we study. So we take a concentrated approach. We don't want to spread the jam too thin. We feel that you can make real discernible change if you concentrate your efforts. And so we have taken what is the notional town centre boundary and then looked at a more concentrated boundary, which is the red line on the map on the right there, which focuses on the area from the train station down to the West Car Park roundabout. But that's not to say that we've ignored any of the sites of interest out with that area. They've still very much been considered. In terms of consolidation, it's about reducing the level of retail to the right level for your town, and also introducing the right types of retail. So it's about looking at diversifying the offer to be more experiential, blended, artisanal and local. And also to look at the future health of retail in terms of, can we introduce other uses at street level? Can we introduce health, workplace, childcare, community hubs, these kind of things that sit among the retail and help footfall and give that activity that's so required at street level. In terms of go bold, we look at we've looked at the bigger redevelopment opportunities within the town, and so these were identified from the outset, and they are the leisure centre site, the current Nevis Centre site, the current hospital and the former adjacent school site, the current site of the library and where M&Co were now situated, which I now believe is now tenanted again, and the West End car park site. So I'll come on to the proposals for each of these as we progress through the document. The next section looks at creating a legible town, and it's about public transport, about active travel, about how we move through the town centre, about the thorny issue of cars, roads and parking, and about the spaces and the creation of quality public space. And so the first section, Connect, we've looked with our partner Sweco at some strategic transport planning, and they've been supportive of the moves that I'm about to take you through. So we look to encourage active travel. There is already an active travel strategy in place, and the report recommends that the continued implementation of that to better connect the heart of Fort William to the wider Lochaber community by means that don't always require car journeys. Possibly the most controversial thing is looking at how we try and mitigate the damage that the A82 has done to the town's connection to the fort, and also how the town is perceived from the A82. And so we've looked at a couple of options. Option one is where we consider the strategic removal of part of Middle Street and the narrowing of a short section of the A82 to one lane in either direction to free up development space to create better connections to the loch and make it more pedestrian and active travel orientated. It provides a greater gateway site into the town centre, would allow us to open up and increase the area of the green space at the parade. And crucially, one of the big moves here also is to try and create an access at grade at street level from the bus and train station over into the high street and open up those views and get rid of the underpass. The second option is of a similar vein, but looks to, in this instance, retain Middle Street. If we can't remove that short section, but still strategically narrow the A82 and a short distance between the two roundabouts. We've had preliminary conversations with Transport Scotland about this, and they are broadly supportive of investigating it, but do appreciate it would have to be part of a much wider ongoing study in terms of the road network. And as I say, this is a long-term vision, so there is time. Things are changing. It may be that this is something that could very well happen, and we believe would be positive. Public transport, the big move here is to perhaps relocate the bus station in line with what the Lochaber Bus Partnership Fund have been advocating. And so this shows a combined public transport hub and the potential for a new hotel and new station building to give a better welcome to the town for people coming in by train and by bus. Car parking, again, we've looked to try and protect car parking wherever possible. We know how important it is to the town. And so we have looked to maintain the majority of the West End car park. The only car parking we are removing in terms of a large area is the Middle Street car park, but we are proposing to put a section back there and then effectively create a net gain in parking through the introduction potentially of a multi-storey unaired, better connected back into the town centre. In shift perceptions, we just look at the pedestrian movement and barriers and how we can improve those. And so we've made a number of recommendations here on how we can improve the public realm and the feel of both the high street and the area around the parade, and how we strengthen connections down to the loch, how we can create a new walkway along the edge of the loch and a new tree belt or sort of barrier buffer effectively to disguise the backs of buildings where we don't have the room to introduce new development. And then we've also looked at the number of public spaces within the town and analysed those and come up with recommendations to create a series of improved public spaces of varying natures along the high street, from Fraser Square through to Cameron Square, Monsey Square, and eventually through to Gordon Square along that spine of the high street. In living, we have looked at where the town centre can contribute to the need for new residential accommodation within the town centre. And so we've looked at a number of things, and a number of sites have been identified and highlighted, which you can see on the right-hand side. So we have looked at the potential former library site in terms of what that could generate if it was to be a mixed-use but residential-led development. We've also looked at the Belford Hospital site and the St Mary's School site and what that could do in terms of a mix of tenures, including an element of student residential, apartments and family housing. If the Lochaber Leisure Centre were to be relocated, what if that site is freed up? What could that site provide? And then we move on to talking about the types of services that residential accommodation in town centres really need to support an increased residential population. And so it's about looking at where do we currently have civic and community healthcare and government services. And part of that would be the potential for a new replacement Nevis Centre, but with a more community and culture focus. And so we looked at a number of sites, and we settled on our preference would be that the parade site would be the optimum location because it's at the heart of the town centre, has great public transport links, has connection to the fort and to the parade, and provides a new gateway to the town centre. And so we've looked at what, in terms of massing, please, this is not architecture, this is purely about massing and scale, and this could be broken down into smaller elements, but this looks at the potential for a new performance and community-based centre on this location. And then can we, if we do relocate the leisure centre, if we do relocate the Nevis Centre, can we look at a new leisure centre? And the Nevis Centre site, current Nevis Centre site would be, for us, a great location for that, again, with great connectivity, and then has the room to expand to contain all the facilities that we think a modern leisure centre needs to serve the wider community. In terms of working, we've looked at where there's the potential for sort of like remote working co-work space within the town centre. There are smaller units on the high street that at street level could be optimised for that. The former Tesco building could contain an element of creative co-work, as could the element of the Mary McIntyre or the BT telephone exchange. As technology improves and space is vacated, could that building be repurposed for workplace? In terms of educate, can we introduce additional student residential, which we know through speaking to the UHI, they do have a requirement for. And then moving on to Vibrant Town, where we look at how we create new attractors to build on the evening and weekend economy and tourism within the town. And so we've recommended a number of potential moves there, like the introduction of a European-style food hall, similar to the Victorian Market in Inverness. We've looked at increasing the number of markets within the town centre, looked at the need for, or the desire for a youth and community hub, and a number of locations where such a facility could be located. Dealing with leisure and tourism, looking at some new dedicated leisure uses, about connecting the town back to the water, about the potential for cruise ship tourism, and a new leisure attractor down on the West End car park to then bookend with the fort and the Nevis Centre, and this to effectively act as an attractor to draw people to both ends of the high street. And that building there could potentially contain an element of children's play, cruise terminal welcome, water sports, soft play and 10-pin bowling could all be concentrated in a dedicated offer at that end of town, but still safeguarding the majority of that car park and also acting as a gateway to the town centre from that side. And then looking at the introduction of more events, Fort William does have a series of a calendar of events, but are there more we could recommend or more we could do to give it more year-round vibrancy? Nightlife just looks at F&D food and beverage opportunities within the town and locations where that could be improved. Illuminate just looks at where we could introduce public art and illuminate the existing buildings and perhaps create a festival out of that. Meanwhile Uses looks at what we can do with any current vacant space or future sites when they become available until they're developed. What can we do to ensure vibrancy and use? And so there's a number of case studies there for both of those types. And then finally, Responsible Town looks at how the town could deal with the climate emergency, how we repurpose and repair existing buildings and don't just take the default of demolish and start again. So we've identified a number of opportunities, including the Mary McIntyre building and the former Tesco, and we've looked at potential options for how these could be repurposed for the betterment of the town. We've looked at the potential for the idea of perhaps some urban farming or community growing space on the roof of that building or in other places. Green Place looks at the situation where we want to green significantly the town centre and work with what's already there. So looking at how we could extend and make the parade do more for the town in terms of introducing additional uses and perhaps extend its influence. And then here is a summary of all the greening moves for climate resilience within the town. So introduce green roofs where we can on new developments, improve or increase the size of the parade, introduce rain gardens and planting to the high street, etc., and along the waterfront. And then looking at green infrastructure and what we need to do to mitigate flood risk. Again, with working with civic engineers, they've given some recommendations. And finally, making the town centre more inclusive. So it's about making sure that we introduce better public facilities, more shelter and seating. And we've made a series of recommendations for how that situation could be improved within the spine of the town centre and why that's important. And then finally, there's a draft delivery of how we potentially could deliver this master plan and what the priority elements in our eyes are. And this really needs buy-in from all of the client body. And so this is the summation of all the moves brought together and how each of these moves in some way will take on board the 5 key tenets of the wider 2040 vision about a connected place, a great place to live, a place facing water, addressing climate change, and a place with a collective vision. And so this summarises all of those moves brought together and how that could be positively transformational for Fort William and create a more resilient town centre going forward. And then we do make a number of recommendations within the delivery plan of 9 key tasks or key focuses or objectives and how these could be actioned. And one of those is to further engage the community, which I believe is going to be the next section. So I hope I haven't gone on too long there, and I will stop sharing. So apologies if I've gone on too long. It's a lot to get in.
Thank you very much. That was, a fantastic vision. You've put a lot of hard work into that. Thank you. We're certainly, I think, one of the things we're looking at here is the community engagement going forward over the next couple of months.
Yes.
So I think Alison might be able to give us a bit more of an update. I know that it's in the report as well, but if Alison is able to just a bit more information on that would be. She's just coming in. It's all right. Good morning, Alison.
Hi, everyone.
Afternoon, Alison. Thank you for joining us.
No problem. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, well, hopefully you've been able, I've just talked through a little bit of what's been appended to the agenda item. So the thought was that it would be good. Well, one of the feedback comments, there was thoughts to do this anyway, but one of the feedback comments was maybe about the potential for more direct and further engagement with certain groups within Fort William. And I think specifically that was flagged. Youth engagement was something that a number of respondents felt needed to be looked at in more detail. And also this question of more direct engagement with specifically those who live or work in the town. So on the basis of that, I've just come into position for Fort William 2040 just at the end of last year and been asked to look at the possibility of what further engagement we could do. So I think you've seen the details there at the moment. I think what we'd like to suggest going forward is some direct engagement where we're going to ask Anthony and colleagues from 360 to actually run some specific sessions with some targeted groups. So the idea for that is a session with students at Lochaber High School and a session with students at the college. And the hope there is similar to engagement Anthony has already done, would be to run a session with the younger people, present the master plan proposals to them, and do some interactive work, focus groups, find out what their thoughts are, yeah, their opinions on the plans, where they would maybe like to see things amended or additions. There is also, I've been speaking to the Chamber, and I would like to link into their networking lunch series and do a similar session again with Anthony, specifically sort of directed at the business community. And the networking lunches are open to members and non-members of the Chamber, so that would be widely available and would be promoted by the Chamber through their network. Again, to get business-focused thoughts on the master plan. I would also like to do a session with the community stakeholder group that Fort William 2040 already has established, specifically to get input from the community councils. That also includes Lochaber Environmental Group and Voluntary Action Lochaber. We're aware that it would be great to be able to go out and speak to everyone directly. That's obviously impractical, really, from a sort of resource and a timing point of view. So the other thing that I'd like to do that would sit alongside this more direct engagement would be to have a public exhibition of the master plan information. There were some 360 produced 8 banners, large posters, detailing the key components of the master plan, the process, some of these ideas, and that was consulted on last November in the Nevis Centre, where around 300 members of the community did come in and look at the posters, and they were able to speak to the architects and representatives from the commissioning clients. That's the Highland Council, Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and the Chamber of Commerce. So what we would like to do is take those banners, and I'd be proposing to put them within Fort William Library, so they're in the high street, and essentially have a concerted programme of awareness raising about the exhibition and the fact that the banners are there and people can go along, they can take their time, they can have repeat visits, they can see the information, and then in that forum there would be the ability to fill in feedback forms which could be left at the library, and that would be returned to myself and colleagues so we can look at that feedback. I think also at points that exhibition would be manned. Myself, I would go down and be there for certain hours. I think we'd also, what I would do is use a range of contacts that we already have through Fort William 2040, through the other client organisations, to specifically email likely interest groups and organisations and individuals to tell them that this is ongoing, and to say if you would like to bring together a group of participants who may have specific questions or a specific interest in the master plan, we would see about arranging a time to spend time with them at that public exhibition. So this is all just designed in as much as possible to provide a variety and a decent length of time for members of the community in Fort William, and community very broadly. And by Fort William, this is not just the town, it would be the wider area because of the importance of Fort William to the whole of Lochaber. And it's just providing this space where we can present the information. The information will also be online, but I'm aware that's not necessarily fully accessible to everyone. It's nice to be able to go and look at something in person, and then there would be opportunities there to feed back thoughts and opinions on the master plan. The final element, just due to some feedback we've had to date, we haven't had a lot of formal written feedback so far. There's been a lot more informal comments at the exhibition, at the workshop that Anthony has already run. But one of the comments was about some of the buildings that have been earmarked for potential changes, but the need to maybe engage with the current either owners or operators within those buildings. The plans are very much, this is what Fort William could look like. It's to provide a basis to start some of kind of discussion, and it's to make sure people are aware of what the plans are and how much weight they have at the moment, which is they are illustrative. They are certainly not a prescriptive, definitive way forward. So we would also like to do a more direct, probably leaflet drop to premises in the town, to businesses and residents, to tell them about the engagement programme. And I'm specifically have in mind maybe some of these premises that have been earmarked for particular proposals, or and just to address any concerns or give the opportunity for owners or operators to see the proposals and feedback to us. So they're the plans at the moment. Does anyone have any specific questions on those?
Yeah, thank you very much, Alison. I think Sarah first.
Yes,
Hi, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Alison, for this presentation. Just a quick one, and you may have answered it already, but I'm particularly interested in item 4, targeted group engagement. Have you been able to engage with community groups, associations? We've got lots of community groups and associations around the town, like Clagon Plantation. And also, have you been able to engage with groups or charities with a specific interest, like mental health, disability?
Thanks, Sarah. I'll pass. I will pass this just to Anthony, because what there's been a process of some engagement to date, in which Anthony and the architects have led, and then what I'm aiming to do is pick up precisely some of the groups you've mentioned. That would be through emailing to tell them about the public exhibition, to remind them that the master plan's online, and to invite comment. But Anthony was probably better able to say exactly who's been spoken to so far.
Yes, in terms of one-to-one, the list is in the document. We've spoken to a number of interest groups and people from different groups, Fort William Community Action Group, etc. And then on the day of the stakeholder event that we held within the Church Hall, a number of local groups were there and were represented, but we are aware that there are a number of other groups that weren't there. But what we've found as well is that sometimes when we've had a one-to-one engagement with someone who's been wearing one hat, they've often wore another hat for another group. So other groups like the town team, for example, haven't been directly spoken to, but the members of the town team have been involved in the process as we've gone through, and then have given us their feedback from that perspective also. But we haven't been able to speak to everybody, I will say that, but we have spoken to people from a number of different groups. But as I said, I can I can dig out the list of all the invitees to the big stakeholder event that we had, in terms of who we've been able to speak to formally.
Yeah, if we could receive the list, that'd be so grateful. Thank you very much.
Alison emailed us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that the one you're talking about, Anthony.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there should be a report that we created that was one of the appendices in the main document.
I think to clarify, I emailed. It's a separate list, but it will build on the list that Anthony produced in the report. There's a stakeholder. I did a bit of stakeholder mapping, and that has started to actually try and identify by name groups. And I think there'll be a stage of preparation before this next stage of engagement, and there would be a process of, I think, double checking and emailing, probably using yourselves with others in the Fort William 2040 stakeholder groups, just to clarify that I am contacting all the appropriate organisations, because I understand there may be small ones, and as Anthony said, some people go across multiple organisations, but there will be a double checking process, and there would definitely be that contact to make sure we let as many members of the community in Fort William know as possible that this work is ongoing.
I can share I've found the list of those who attended the main stakeholder event, just to give you a flavour of the groups that were there and the groups that weren't there, if that would help. Or I can forward that on. I think Alison, you may already have a copy of that. It's within the report and one of the appendices at the back of the document.
Yep.
Where I think
we can see that.
Oh,
I think
cool.
Angus.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. I think Angus had a question.
Sure.
Anthony, I think we talked about this when we very first met, and my over the last decade, we're always telling people in Lochaber that Fort William is a dream and going to get better, and we're all very excited about it. And indeed, in the 18 months since we've been councillors, you know, the high street has got worse, and more shops have closed, and it still rains every day. And there is a worry that we're going out there saying it's all going to happen, and it's all very exciting. And it just we're raising expectations. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but I think we should. But it is a very serious concern. People are cynical, and we're always left out, and it never happens over here. And you know, the Belford hospitals, you know, not getting replaced, and everything is rubbish. And I'm afraid that we might be trying to sell people who just don't believe that everything will happen. How did Paisley get the money, for example, to this is £1 billion project, isn't it?
Paisley is so if I heard you, sorry, I think I picked you up okay. In terms of the Paisley, you're talking about the Paisley project that we worked on?
Yeah. Well, how did they get the money?
Well, they'd already committed to spending £100 million on their cultural assets, which sort of formed the backbone of what it wasn't part of our project, but independent of what we were looking at, they had already committed that funding to restoring the town hall, their arts centre, relocating their library to the heart of the high street, which has just opened, and then redeveloping the Paisley Museum. And those projects are either just about to complete or have completed. But in terms of what we were doing, the main focus of our vision for the town centre was the redevelopment of one of the failing shopping centres at the heart of the town centre and the consolidation of retail from that one to the other. And I'm pleased to say that the consolidation of retail is happening. Retailers are migrating from one to the other and not leaving the town. And the centre that we had proposed to be redeveloped, on the back of the vision, a private developer came in and purchased the site, purchased the adjacent vacant M&S unit, and we've been able to secure them outline consent for planning in principle for a redevelopment, a significant redevelopment of that site, which is in the spirit of the master plan. So it's 100 new houses, a hotel, a new leisure unit, and smaller retail and significant public realm. And we're now on the cusp of taking that for detailed planning with a view to then, so it's private investment that has come in off of the back of the vision. So it's not always about, I suppose, yeah, it's not always expecting Highland Council or High to be the people to put in to make these things happen. If you do make an offer look attractive, then private investment can be sought, and that has been thus far what's happened in Paisley for the main thrust of the vision, and we're hopeful that that will continue and that it will be built out. But that's been really encouraging for that one. And in other sites, in other visions and town centres that we're looking at, we're finding a similar thing, where it's not just the responsibility of the local authority or government to fund these things, but there are private investors or house builders out there who are interested in taking on sites and starting to develop. And I appreciate that what we are showing is a significant development, and it will take time, but it is a long-term vision. And these things, you've got to just pick these things off project by project and prioritise.
Yep. Thank you. Any other questions? No, nothing online. Well, okay.
Anthony, thanks for the presentation. And I share your aspirations to make Fort William better, but there's a but coming. And the but is this. That's a trunk road that goes through Fort William.
Yes.
I want more access to the water. At the moment, that's a dual carriageway, and it has 2 crossings for pedestrians, one controlled, one uncontrolled. And this projection, there are 5 crossings on the dual carriageway, plus another one I would assume where the Belfast Hospital currently is, who knows what it will be in 2040, probably still in the same place perhaps, given the news we've just heard. But, so that'll be 6 crossings across the trunk road, which is at the moment dual carriageway. And we're taking it back down to 2 lanes. And I'm sitting in the chamber in front of here, and we've got 2 photos on the wall, big photos, 6 foot by 10 foot, and they show from the High Street what most locals would consider to be its absolute heyday, but it really was busy, there was traffic in it and all the rest of it. And at that point, just dealing with the traffic of the 60s and the 70s, the traffic used to queue in the summer 3-4 miles to the south of Port William, and likewise to the north. And you've got a scheme here that basically takes us back to 2 lanes of traffic. And traffic has got there's a lot more cars on the road than there was back then. What of the trunk road? Like, have they actually looked at it, agreed with it, put any traffic in projection software on it, and looked at how the traffic streams will be dealt with? Because I share your aspiration, I want to see this, but I'm struggling as to how that road system, as illustrated, can handle the traffic. And for me, that's the hinge that everything works from in this scheme. We have to be able to get a lot of cars through Fort William, between a mountain and a loch or a tight space. How do we do that? Because I'm struggling to see that. The trunk roads really are crucial to this.
Yeah, well, if I take your point, I agree. It's a very important road. It obviously is an issue, particularly in summer months. This, however, is a sort of an aspirational, long-term vision for the town centre. We have spoken to Transport Scotland on a couple of occasions. We have engaged with a transport consultant as part of our team. We proffered this idea to our transport consultant, and they said, well, let's take it to Transport Scotland and see what they think. They've come back, and rather than the expected response of, that will never fly, no chance, we're not interested, you can't touch that road, they have very much softened their position, but it is very much caveated on the requirement for a much wider, more detailed study of the wider road network and where the real bottlenecks and issues are occurring, to find if there's ways that we can mitigate that issue on that short stretch to make the town centre better. So I appreciate there is still more work that would need to be done, and more detailed research and modelling of the wider road network to see if this could be achieved. But the purpose of this study was to show an aspiration and to show the potential for a better future and a better connection to the loch, but try and work within the boundary that we have. It may transpire through detailed modelling and what have you that it's not possible, in which case the dual carriageway remains in place, in which case we would still be keen to do something out into the loch, which then looks at reclamation. But these things are so expensive and so ambitious that we're trying to walk a fine line between being ambitious but also being pragmatic at the same time, and working with the space that we have and what's the best we can possibly do with the space that we have. So I completely take that on board, but we do believe that with further study, with the length of the aspiration of this master plan, and as transport modelling changes, you've got more active travel, car ownership is potentially going to be on the decrease. That there may come a time when this is quite a simple thing to achieve, but right now I appreciate it's not, but it is subject to further study. But we do think it's something worth exploring and worth fighting for to try and achieve.
Yep, thank you for that, Anthony, and for your question, Thomas. Have we got any other questions? I think we don't have any online. Okay, so are members happy? We've got two. Sorry.
Just a comment, Kate, that it just looks a very exciting development for the future. Just wanted to record that.
Yes, agree. I agree, Andrew. Thank you. Thank you.
It's fantastic.
It is good. I mean, it's nice. an exciting vision to work towards. So are members happy to agree the content of the master plan and delivery framework and to agree the engagement programme under the auspices of Fort William 2040?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yep, sure.
Excellent. Thank you. Great. So thank you very much, Anthony and Alison, for joining us, and Dot for your introduction. Have a good day.
Thank you. Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. David Woody's online. Okay, moving on to item 7, housing revenue account, the garage rents for the next financial year. And hello to David Wood, Principal Housing Officer. Thank you for coming along, and I'll hand over to you if you want to do a quick summary.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. I'm not actually here to present the item number 7. It's number 8. I'm going to present, which is the garage report.
Yes, the garage rents, which, sorry, I do have on my agenda as item 7, but yes, you're definitely the garage rents. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that. Okay, so to present the Lochaber garage report for 2024-25. I won't go over it word for word because I'm sure you've seen the report, but I'll cover the salient points and then we'll invite you to agree rent level increases for garage and garage sites for the coming year. So if we look at the first section of current income, last year members set rent levels and agreed a 5% increase. The resulting income generated is shown in table 5.1 of the report and comes to a total amount of £83,242 from 102 garages and 110 garage sites, so 212 units in total. At the time of writing the report, occupancy levels were very good, with only 8 void garage units. Table 5.3 of the report highlights this. If we quickly move on to cost, the cost of renting a garage or garage site varies between council tenants and non-council tenants, the cost being slightly higher for the latter. Table 5.4 gives a breakdown of specific numbers and current rent levels. However, I think it's important to point out that the average weekly rental charge Highland wide stands at £9.94 for a garage and £1.77 for a garage site. The breakdown identifies that Lochaber's existing rental charges are slightly above those. The repairs budget for day-to-day garage repairs is £7,000 a year. And again, it's important to highlight that any additional expenditure that's required beyond this needs to be identified through area environmental and plan maintenance budgets. In terms of rent options, tenant consultation for Highland for council house rent increases for the coming year, which will be considered at the Housing and Property Committee on the 31st of January, were based on 3 options: increases of 6.5%, 7.3% and 7.95%. If we use the same criteria for garage rents, table 6.2 of the report indicates for your consideration the respective revenue that each increase will generate. And if we finally move on to the Lochaber Garage and Garage Site Action Plan, since the formulation of the plan way back in 2019, work's progressed very well. Sections 7 and 8 of the report offer detailed information. However, I think it's fair to say the work undertaken to date has been well received and warmly approved by the local residents. But again, important to point out any outstanding work on the action plan that's left over, such as the demolition of the Clark Drive garages, will need to be budgeted for coming years due to financial constraints of this year. And that really concludes the report. So again, you're invited to consider rent levels for the coming year.
Thank you, David. Does anyone have any questions? No. I've just a couple of. I presume we won't know the outcome of the tenant consultation on general rent increases till the Housing and Property Committee. Would that be correct? And also, you're talking about the repairs budget of 7k. When was it set at 7k? Have there been any increases in that budget, or how many years has it been set at 7k?
Okay, it's not moved from 7k for the last few years for sure. Probably Lucky MacDonald would have more information on that, but certainly for the past couple of years, it's been 7,000 to my knowledge. But to look at your first point, we won't know the outcome of the rent consultation until the 31st of January. But speaking to my colleagues at tenant participation, the indication is that tenants are looking at the middle option, by and large. But again, you're absolutely correct. We won't know that until the 31st of January.
Yeah, okay. So I guess the question is, are we happy to agree on either the middle, a 7.3% or 7.9% increase or 6.5% increase? What are members' general thoughts on that?
I'm interested in who would vote for anything other than the lowest rent increase. Seems, if you ask me how much I want to pay a car, I'd pay the lowest rate.
I guess it depends if whether how much maintenance people want and is required on these on garages, etc.
If we go for the 7.95%, which will give an extra, say, £6,000, can we increase the 7,000 up to 10,000?
I think if you look at the table in the report, the difference between 7.95 and the middle option is not actually that great because of the low levels. So I don't. The percentages I feel are slightly misleading. I don't think the difference in rates are that much.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the increase in rent, there's not really the potential to increase the annual repairs budget from 7,000. Is that what we're?
There's no intention to increase the repairs budget as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
And that will not affect the demolition, which could happen in 2023.
There's been some demolition already taken part, and it's been well received because aesthetically it improves the area a great deal. There are 3 more sites we've identified for demolition, which, if I remember rightly, is Clark Drive, Kilmally Road, Broome Drive. But again, financial constraints prohibit that at the moment, which is why it will need to be budgeted in the future. When that will come about, again, I couldn't comment because of budgetary constraints. I don't know when that will be, but it certainly remains on the action plan, and the plan won't be complete until those demolitions have taken place.
But the rent increase will not affect.
No, the rent increase will be ring fenced specifically to plough back into basic and day-to-day repairs for garages and garage sites.
So the income from these rents comes back into the Lochaber area, or does it go? What?
No, it's ring fenced for the Lochaber area, yeah, and specifically not into the general account, but specifically for garages.
Okay, so would we have to go with the mid 7.3% rent increase? Is Liz?
Well, I was wondering why, we're being advised if we could take the top one. So I think if they've done their sums, one should take advice from the people that's been doing the sums and do the top one. My opinion, but
It's only a penny a week difference or something like that.
I'm happy to go with the middle or the top. Whatever
Same
the
for me,
majority
Kate.
is.
Middle or top for me.
Yep, okay. We got a majority for the 7.95% then.
That's the top one.
Yeah, 7.95 is high. Yep, okay. Are we content with that?
Okay.
Yes, okay. Yeah. Okay, so just yes, Thomas.
A quick question of David, since Liz, I was asked this question a couple of nights ago and I didn't know the answer. David, if you don't know the answer, you can give me it later on, but roughly, even if it was to the nearest 100, what is the housing waiting list currently in Lochaber?
I'm sorry, Councillor McLennan, I couldn't pick that up.
I'm saying, what roughly is the housing waiting list in Lochaber at the moment? I was asked this question a couple of days ago and I was going to get in touch with you. Since you're on the screen, I just thought I'd maybe ask you now.
I'm sorry, what roughly is? I'm sorry, the sound's very, very bad.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. I was basically just asking what roughly, and it can be to the nearest 100, I suppose, what is roughly the housing waiting lists in Lochaber at the moment? Like what have we got as a waiting list figure?
Right, it fluctuates all the time, obviously, and people tend to be very specific about where they wish to accept a garage or a garage site, obviously dependent on where they live.
Sorry, David, I'm not talking about garages. I was sorry.
Are you talking about a housing waiting list?
The houses, roughly, what is the waiting list for houses? I was asked a couple of days ago and I didn't know the exact answer, but roughly, what is the...
Right, again, that fluctuates. Highland wide, well over a couple of thousand. Locally, probably varies between 800 and 1,000 all the time.
Right. And is that for Lochaber or are you talking about Fort William there?
I'm talking about Lochaber.
Right. Okay, that's fine. Thanks very much.
Thank you. So I think committee are happy to recommend the 7.95% garage rent increase then, is that correct? Agreed. Yes, agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much for the report and for joining us this afternoon, David.
You're welcome. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Bye. Same to you.
Okay. So moving on to item 8, which is the play funding Scottish Government play funding allocation, and we've got David Lamont has joined us online. Good afternoon, Davy. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, members, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to us. It's the Scottish Government play funding allocation, as you're saying. Members, you have the Scottish Play Funding Allocation Report in front of you, and we are seeking agreement on the 4 recommendations within the report, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may pose.
Okay, thanks, Davy. Does anyone have any questions? Nothing online. Okay, so are we happy to agree the allocation fundings that have been identified for both wards 11 and 21 and to homologate the spend, the works already completed in both wards? Yes.
Yes,
yep.
Yes, we are, Kate.
I think we're agreed. Yep. So, well, thank you very much for joining us, Davy, and have a good afternoon.
Short and sweet. Thank you very much for your time, members. Yep. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. So the final, we're on to item 9, which is the Community Regeneration Fund, and I think Martin is going to be joining us in person. So we'll just have to wait.
Thank you.
Yeah, probably. And I think, have we got Fiona? We might have Fiona online. Is that correct?
I'm joining in lieu of Fiona, who I think is trying to juggle meetings today.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We're just Martin will be with us in a minute. It was too quick. Thanks very much for joining us, Martin, for Community Regeneration Fund assessment of applications, and we got Mark Crowe online as well in filling in for Fiona. So thank you. Good afternoon.
Is everyone hearing me okay on the call?
Oh, can you put that? Yeah.
I shall speak up.
You need a big, loud, booming voice, Martin.
Thanks, Andrew. Afternoon, members. This report details the Community Regeneration Fund applications received in the current round. There were 22 in total. However, as you're aware, 5 of those were directed to the Community-Led Local Development Fund, as they were capital projects that potentially could meet that fund's tight requirement to spend by the end of February. As mentioned previously, we said that these would be reviewed prior to the committee and a verbal update given on the day. Just to very quickly recap, the 5 projects were Lochaber Rural Education Trust and the minibus application, Malligan Moorer Community Centres kitchen upgrade, Morven Water Sports Club, and various water sports based kit that they wish to purchase, the resurfacing of the car park in Arrowsig opposite the Spar shop, and Shielbridge Hall for a new fire alarm system. So I'm pleased to tell you that all 5 of those are remaining with that fund and are withdrawn from your requests today on your budget. There's therefore 17 applications for you to consider today. The total request for you is £445,001.80 to be very precise. Your available budget is £540,708.21. So if you approve all 17 today, you will have an underspend of £95,706.41. And due to the nature of the Community Regeneration Fund and the requirement that some funds are for capital expenditure and some for revenue, that underspend breaks down as 87,416 for capital and 8,289 for revenue. So all 17 of the projects before you today are technically eligible to support. All have had a RAG assessment with various criteria rated red, amber or green with an overall score assigned to the project. And that's based on the information provided by the applicants. Just to note that red or amber does not mean they're ineligible, but they do highlight either issues that would require conditions in any funding offer, or they reflect a limited response to the particular question in the application. So members, you've seen the applications in advance. They're included as appendices to the report along with a summary of the RAG ratings. The report asks you to consider each application and formally decide if you wish to approve, defer or reject. And in the case of an approval, please confirm the grant award and any particular additional conditions you might wish to attach to the funding offer. The report finally also asks you to agree to ring-fence any remaining funds to deliver area priorities identified through work to develop an area-based plan, subject to full applications being brought forward to future committees. And that essentially serves to demonstrate that the remaining funds are committed for a purpose while retaining a degree of flexibility as to what you might actually want to use them for. So, Chair, unless there's any queries at this point, I'll summarise each application briefly and the key points from the assessment and seek a decision from members. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Any questions before we work through them?
Okay, thank you. Okay, the first one up is from Shop Mobility Lochaber. I think members are well aware of the work that Shop Mobility does locally. They are seeking funding towards salary costs for 24-25 to cover an engineer, office coordinator and some sessional worker time, together with a contribution to public liability insurance and some accountancy fees. The application clearly has experienced staff. The project itself has operated for over 20 years and it's funding for a well-established operation which, subject to confirmation, should successfully deliver the project. The nature of their funding strategy means they do tend to be dependent on grant funding year on year, but they do demonstrate a very strong track record of securing that funding and delivering the project. Happy to take any questions on that one.
All in favour?
Yeah, I'm in favour.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is from Lochaber Hope for the New Connections project. Funding is sought to cover 2 new posts to expand provision at the project operating out of the old job centre. Specific costs for a new project manager and project worker, together with a contribution towards line management and a small element of overheads. 56,000 is sought from community regeneration funding. There's very strong evidence of community support and need for this project. It was very evident there were 25 or so letters of support provided with the application from a wide range of organisations. Going forward, the financial projections for this project show that it will continue to be dependent on a degree of grant funding, but that is projected to reduce significantly year on year. And this flexibility and additional resource allows them to generate more revenue from the operation in the job centre and focus more time on funding applications as well. Thank you.
Happy to agree. Angus, I'm happy to approve that one.
Yeah,
Angus,
it's good.
At 1:15.
Okay.
So yeah, you might just need to. What's that? 1 minute. Yeah.
We'll keep the summaries concise, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is from Noidart Farm Community Interest Company. They are essentially seeking start-up costs for a community farm on Noidart to basically generate and deliver more food and fruit and drink on the peninsula. Quite straightforward, very well written application, demonstrates good level of support and sustainability going forward.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you. The next one is for egg trading. This is again a very straightforward, relatively small scale project looking to set up a composting operation to deal with food waste on the island opposite the Anne Lamrig Centre. Yep, that's pretty much the key things to say for that one. Just to note as well, although there's no match funding from the applicant in terms of cash, there's a very good level of in-kind support demonstrated for that project as well. And the compost would be used to support the tree nursery operation on the island.
Yep, happy.
Thank you. Voluntary Action Lochaber. This is for 2 staffing posts to increase their support to third sector organisations within Lochaber. Very strong need demonstrated in this application in terms of the lack of current capacity and the number of third sector organisations within the VAL umbrella. There's some 128 of them. So, very, very good legacy from that project I've supported, I think.
Very happy to support that.
Thank you. The next one is from Linney Leisure. You're familiar with this one, members. It's for critical roof repairs. There is a strong element of contingency in this one, just to note. That's provision just to allow for any unexpected discoveries once detailed work begins on the roof. If that's not required, it would be requested to be redirected to internal refurbishment. Again, demonstrates strong community support. Thank you. Road to the Elves Facilities Group, they are looking to develop the next phase of the circular walk in Malig. Again, strong community support. There is an identified contractor on site in Malig, so that offers significant cost savings, and that contractor was lined up to do the work subject to approval.
Yep, happy.
Thank you. High Life Highland, Ardnamurchan Arts and Nature project. Two aspects to this project: a series of art workshops in Ardnamurchan High School and local primary schools, together with open community workshops in the Soonart Centre. And the second element is targeted outdoor learning support for young people with additional support needs. Targets young people, which members indicated that was something they would like to see coming forward in applications, and this was also highlighted as a key priority for local people in the Have Your Say Lochaber report 2022.
Yep, happy.
Thank you. Green Fingers. Now, I'm aware there's a slight issue with this one. The original application was pitched as effectively refurbishment of the greenhouse on site. Unfortunately, due to the local storms, it's now significantly more than refurbishment, unfortunately. So I think if that one was approved, I would just keep in mind that it would probably come back to you with a slightly revised profile in terms of what they want to do and the expenditure they want to use that one for.
Okay, could I might I suggest we hold off approving that and ask them to do an urgent resubmit, because they might need a whole new greenhouse or God knows what. What do people think?
I think effectively, Councillor, it would just be the difference between refurbishment and I think effectively replacing the greenhouse, which is effectively in line with what they were wanting to do, just on a slightly larger scale.
All right. Okay, I'm happy to let it go through if others are happy.
I think events have moved on from refurbishment to rebuild, but we've got a surplus there, and I think we should be flexible and maybe look to giving them additional to help get this project up off the ground again.
Yeah. So happy to.
So we'll agree the recommendation, but invite them to come back.
Thank you. The next one, Fort William Marina and Shoreline, and the project to those ones are the ones that are not coming forward. The next one, Fort William Marina and Shoreline Community Interest Company, and the installation of toilets in the West End car park. Members, you've had discussion with this previously, and you had indicated that you wanted to support sort of the earlier phases of that project. They have indicated that they would seek support from yourselves for water and sewage connection, electrical connection, planning costs, and some elements of groundworks as well. There are some significant outstanding requirements with this one that we would condition in any offer letter to them. They do need to secure their lease, planning permission, and match funding for the project as a whole. Happy to take any questions or your views on it.
I think we discussed this in the provisional meeting, and I'm in favour of Thomas's suggestion that we give it to them because they did great work and we need to seek funding anyway. So I'm in favour of it.
I'm content to support the recommendation for this one.
Thank you, members.
With the conditions that you've outlined.
Yeah, thank you. Fort William Town Team Skio, a very straightforward project. They just want to install some solar panels on their hut on the parade. It would allow the facility to be used in the evening by other community groups as well. And there's an element of it about a solar-powered water bowser that aids their work in upkeeping the hanging baskets in the high street in the summer.
Support the town team do fantastic work.
Yeah,
thank you. Morven Games and Gala Week Committee. This is the early stages of significant development of Knock Park down in Lochaber. They have a number of community aspirations for the site. It could generate significant revenue for the group and enhance the sort of local tourism provision. Ultimately, they want to set up a 10-bay motorhome campsite and various other improvements to the playing pitch there as well. This early phase is for deer fencing, water and electrical connections, and initial groundworks for the motorhome site.
report.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Next one, Isle of Canna Community Development Trust and development work of Corrigan Barn. This application was presented in such a way that there's a large element of practical restorative works on the barn. They were included for context because they needed to be done urgently. However, this one is looking for professional fee support for a costed 10-year management plan, thermodynamic modelling and professional support for capital funding applications. Demonstrates very strong community support, and it's a long-term aspiration for the community on Canna.
Yeah, happy.
Okay, our Gower area SKIO, they are looking for support to employ a 1-year post for a development officer. This is specifically to take forward the recommendations from the Ardgour Place Plan, which has recently been developed. And so that demonstrates extensive community engagement that's happened on the peninsula there. This is now felt necessary to make that plan a reality and take it forward.
Agreed.
Yeah. Thank you. Spainbridge, Roybridge and Achnacarry SKIO. This is for a range of professional fees to help take forward the proposal to put housing on the former Roybridge Primary School site. There's a wide range of professional fees covered by this investment if you're minded to support it. And it's clearly an aspiration for the community to develop that site for affordable housing.
In favour? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Isle of Egg Heritage Trust, this is to develop a crofting development plan for the island, specifically funding to employ a consultant. The funds will also cover travel costs to Egg for the consultant. Very well written, clear evidence of support for the project, and just generally a very well detailed application in terms of the content of the application form.
Happy to go ahead.
Thank you. And finally, members, Kinloch Leaving Community Trust. Again, this is for a development officer salary cost. The key difference with this one is that the application shows that there is funding will come on stream to make this a longer term post. It's not just going to be a 1-year post. This is for bridging funding effectively to get them to a point where rental income makes that post sustainable going forward. So it's encouraging to see a development officer post that has that element of longer term sustainability about it.
Yes. I think it's the most
happy.
Thanks, members. That concludes all of the applications. We're just now looking for your agreement for point 3 in the recommendations to ring fence the underspend for that purpose, and we can liaise with you going forward how you want to deal with that.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, members.
Thank you very much for all your work on that, Martin, and good luck
Yeah.
to all the projects.
Thank you. We'll
Forward to hearing how they go.
contact the applicants, let them know the good news and get the paperwork out to them. So,
When will we get the money?
they'll get notification today. In terms of the money itself, it will depend on each individual project. There will be some conditions that we'll need to iron out before projects can start in some cases, but hopefully not too distant future.
Yeah, look forward to hearing how they go.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, members.
Thank you, Martin.
Cheers.
So just going back to that was item 9. So item 10, we're just noting the award discretionary fund grants that have been allocated so far this year, and that was item 10. Item 11 is noting the minutes of the October meeting last year, which were approved by council in December. So thank you. That's the meeting concluded. And thank